Oh, there you are. Hey, I just decided until everything blows over, I'm just gonna, live on the internet where it's safe. Well, it would be safe if it weren't for all those awful people they keep making. But luckily, thanks to our sponsor at Surfshark, you have your own guard dog on the internet. And that guard dog is also a fucking shark, like a Mako retriever. Either way, Surfshark is there to keep your personal browsing data safe. And it also allows you to confidently navigate the seas of another country's internet entirely. Say, Canada has something on their Netflix that you really want to watch, but you can't if you're in America. Well, Surfshark's got you covered, and they'll let you browse confidently from the comfort of your own home. You can download Surfshark for free now on any device, but if you want all of your devices covered by their immaculate service, please feel free to use the link in the description and use the code TeamFourStar when you check out to get 85% off of your order, as well as 3 free bonus months. So thank you once again to Surfshark, and now on to the Talkcast Podshow. Wow. Oh, fuck. Hello and welcome to the Talkcast Podshow, the #1 show on the internet and the song in your heart. I'm Lanny Pachor, and I am joined this week by animator extraordinaire, fellow theater kid, and the master of all fists, Stefan. How are you doing?
I'm overwhelmed by that introduction. I don't know if all of that describes me, but I'll take theater kid.
Absolutely is. And we are also joined by our music meister himself. You might have heard some of his works playing before this began if you were joining us live here on twitch.tv/stream4star. Ein Tunes. How you doing, Ein?
Good afternoon. I am doing just fine. Or as fine as things can get during this sort of surreal time, but we're here to be positive.
Yeah, I very much miss the studio. I'm not going to lie. I've been waking. It's like a you get in that perpetual cycle. I wake up in my house, I pretty much stay in my house, and then I go to bed and I wake up again. And it's Groundhog Day. But you know what? At least media keeps coming out. And at least I can keep that song in my heart because Disney Plus finally dropped Hamilton. They're recording, I believe they recorded it back in 2016 and have taken a few years mixing it. I don't know necessarily what the delay was, but Hamilton is now available for everybody who pays Disney Plus's premium fees to watch in their homes.
The delay was Disney wanted to release it theatrically sometime in 2021, but the virus has caused them to have a need for actual content on Disney Plus.
That makes sense. It's no wonder they've just been dropping everything that they've been working on and holding on to. It's like, just put it out there. Oh man, how many people got to see Onward? Who cares? Throw it on there.
Yeah, the only big Disney Plus show they've gotten to release was The Mandalorian. The Winter Soldier and Falcon show is gonna have to just wait for a while.
Yeah, you need to do so many. I mean, living in this time when you have to do any reshoots and you want to focus on making sure people are staying healthy when so many are dying to this awful disease, including a Broadway native even recently. Terrible tragedy in the news.
Yeah.
But as many of you might know, I enjoy singing. I was very much a musical theater kid in high school. I started it around sophomore year and have always been into kind of the musical theater scene. Stefan, I know you were fairly similar in high school, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I really got started in middle school with theater stuff. I as soon as I sort of on a whim decided to audition for theater, it's oh, I found a thing that's my thing. And
what was your first show?
The first show I ever did was a show called Happily Ever After. and I played a character named Winston, I believe, who was a narrator. I think it was one of the Grimm brothers. Like, it was a big fairy tale thing.
Right on. I did something similar with Into the Woods in high school.
Did they actually do both acts?
They did both acts.
Oh, good.
Yeah. You don't just skimp out there. However, it's odd because my high school was absolutely massive, but that is like one of the smallest casts in a show that you could possibly do. And this school is normally doing like things like Grease, anything where there's like a million background characters to get that, proud parent money. They decided to do Into the Woods for some reason.
My high school, like, we couldn't even do a musical every year because our theater program was so underfunded. We had to build up the budget to do a musical every 2 years.
Ooh.
And unfortunately, the budget got a little dwarfed at one point, so I only got to do one musical in high school, and it was a huge bummer to me because I love musicals. But I made up for it with some community college. Not community college, but just community theater productions.
Nice. That's something I never actually got into, actual community theater.
I miss it.
I was similar to you guys. I started musical theater when I was, I think it might have been 8.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and I did basically some theater every summer up until I went to college. And it was... I started out with it was like a camp show, written originally by the person who ran the summer camp. Each one of 100 kids had a speaking role, even if it was just a few lines, and the songs were really fun and whimsical and campy. I eventually got into more serious theater once I hit high school. I did Guys and Dolls twice. Once I was Nicely Johnson, and the other time I was Nathan Detroit. And then I did Aida, where I played Zoser. I did a show called a Day in Hollywood, A Night in the Ukraine, which is very unknown, but it actually won several Tonys back in its day. And then I've done a lot of non-musical theater work too, but my last major theater role was as Moonface Martin in Anything Goes.
And a show that we share in common.
Who were you?
I was the captain.
That guy, the fun guy. Yes,
he had a couple of lines and stuff. I don't know. My first play that I was ever in was Oklahoma, my sophomore year in high school. I got, Judd Fry because I was the burliest guy that auditioned, and I was the only one willing to yell when we came back for callbacks. So I was like, he looks grumpy and angry and surly, and it immediately spoke to my vanity that I got a, supporting role the first time I came out for it. So I'm like, hey, I guess I'm in musical theater now.
Yeah.
Then I moved on with it. I know, Stefan, one show that we share in common, we both were in Little Shop, I believe.
Yeah. I got to play Seymour in a production, and it was very fun.
I was Audrey too, which
of course
which eventually turned into my Popo voice. Funny enough, it's probably still my favorite musical, Little Shop, but let's move on to Hamilton, which is by far the thing that has just exploded the population of Broadway, probably more so than any show since Phantom.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, because Wicked was really big, but the buzz around Hamilton was holy shit. Like, even people
Hamilton's a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, like beyond anything. It
to the point where there's major backlash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was your first introduction to Hamilton? Let's start with you, Stefan.
For me, it was just seeing theater kids on the internet buzzing about it, and eventually, I believe the first time I really listened to the entire album was actually with my sister on the drive over to the first office opening party for TFS.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really cool. But what about you, Ein? When was the first? What was the first time you got introduced to Hamilton?
2015. It was my sister works, or well, recent events notwithstanding. My sister works on off Broadway and off Broadway shows, and she was raving about it.
Cool.
And I went to see it, and I fell in love with it, and then I went to see it again the following year, and I was still in love with it. And then I was very excited when Martin contacted me and said, "Hey, let's do a parody of You'll Be Back with Frieza as the king." And I was like, yes, that makes too much sense.
Let us please do that.
Yes,
now.
Exactly. And then obviously Alexander Anderson just it fit way too well not to do it. I would have been dismayed if we just hadn't made that connection. So
still one of the songs I'm most proud of that we put together.
Indeed.
My first introduction to Hamilton, a little more laissez-faire, was I think back in 2016 there was a YouTube video that went semi-viral of the cast performing at the White House a couple of the songs. I'm like, oh, this is legit. I want to hear more of this. So I went out and I got the album and I listened to it and I'm like, oh shit.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing about Hamilton. Why does it work so well? Like, what makes this, of all musical theater things, just explode? Because at its face, I mean, it doesn't seem like the kind of thing that would get anybody's attention. It's a historical piece about one of the founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton, who wasn't even the most
rap.
Exactly. There's a few reasons, in my opinion, it works so well. So musical plays traditionally have a mix of dialogue and song, but you lose the energy of a sung-through when you do that. Now, sung-through musicals have a lot of energy and momentum, but the non-stop singing can be hard to relate to, and it can be a turn-off for some. Like Yoself and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat is a good example of that for me. It's got absolutely fantastic music, but it never stops. Hamilton, by using both rap and song where it makes sense, helps the production keep its rhythm without becoming overwhelming. And it keeps it relatable, and it doesn't hurt that the music and rhymes are absolutely phenomenal as well.
Yeah, I would...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Stefan.
I was just going to say that the fact that sung through also made it a very, very good album to listen to just as a concept album.
Yes.
Which meant it was approachable, and that means that people could get into it without paying hundreds of dollars and being on a wait list to see the show.
Exactly.
If I'm correct, there's only like one part in the show that is not in the album.
Yep, there is one small bit.
One very small part. And I actually, like, when I first listened to it, I'm like, wow, they just go from beat to beat to beat here. It just keeps going.
You get a really full experience.
I would almost compare it less to traditional Broadway musicals and more to an opera or a hip opera, if you would.
Yeah.
Because it just
I think originally it was a concept
forward.
album. I think that's part of why it works so well.
Yeah,
it did. It did start as a concept album. Lin-Manuel Miranda was on layover at an airport, and he was just browsing books, and he happened to pick up this one about Alexander Hamilton. I don't know what prompted him to do so, but he did, and he was like, "Wow, this guy's badass." He was like, okay, I'm gonna make some hip-hop songs about it, and eventually it turned into what we know today as Hamilton, an American Musical. And it's just one of those things where if he hadn't happened to see that book on that particular day, for want of a nail, we wouldn't have the musical what it is today. It's fascinating.
Have you guys seen the Lin-Manuel Miranda performance at the White House when he was still working on the musical?
Yes.
Yeah, I did eventually drift over to that video as well, after watching the thing that got me into it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Oh, here's his original piece. Huh.
And the fact that people laugh at him when he first performed it, which is
it's bizarre. And now he's sitting there with a Tony, and I think he almost got an Oscar too.
He expected this kind of response. I imagine he expected the same response as he got with In the Heights, which is a great show, but did not get anywhere near this level
This absolutely exploded and just kind of cemented him in Broadway history.
And it made him a household name, whereas before he was just kind of a, okay, Broadway people know who this guy is.
Yeah, like I think before this, I was rewatching through The Sopranos recently. He had just a no-name walk-on small speaking role in that, where I think he played like a bellhop at a hotel.
Yep.
My TV connection with him is actually, did you guys ever watch House?
Of course.
Yes.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
See the stint where Dr. House was in rehab, and there was an episode where he rapped with a guy, and it was really dorky.
Yeah.
It has been so long since I've seen House, but you know what? You're ringing some bells.
There's an episode where Lin-Manuel Miranda's in there. He plays like a guy in rehab who raps, and he gets Dr. House to rap with him.
Dr. House is in the house, y'all. Yes.
It's really bad, but it's charming, because even when Lin is not the best, like doing the best thing in the room, he's always charming.
Oh yeah, like he's got that charisma about him.
Yeah.
Where. And we can get into this. While I absolutely love Hamilton, I love that you can now go watch it on Disney Plus. He is definitely an outlier within the cast, in my opinion. He just like he's very soft spoken on stage when he's doing stuff. He has this like kind of timid mannerism that I don't know if it reflects well in the character.
To an extent, I mean, it's much different live, and I think his interpretation of the character actually evolved somewhat as he was going through it, because what you see on Disney Plus is not how I saw him play the character. When I saw him play the character, he was much more outspoken and headstrong, which is a lot more like what the character is. So I think, if I recall correctly, he and Leslie Odom Jr., who played Aaron Burr, those two were constantly talking with each other and adjusting how they perform certain parts as their interpretation of the characters evolved. So it makes sense that we might have seen it differently, and some people might like it one way and some people might like it the other way. But that's also one of the things that makes Hamilton work. It's just such a phenomenal cast. Even the most Broadway shows have maybe one or two big stars, and then some up and comers, and then an ensemble that is just getting started. But Hamilton was just big name.
In the Broadway scene.
Yes, in the Broadway scene. Yeah, and having Jonathan Groff in there just as Jonathan Groff is one of the biggest names, and having him in a role that has, I think, maybe 10 minutes of screen time is just, it was mind-blowing that they would just use him like that. But of course, he steals the show as the king.
Yes, but the king has some of the best parts. It's a Broadway dream role, honestly.
Yeah.
Though I share our friend Martin / Little Karibo's feeling that the staging's a little disappointing when you've just listened to it and then you watch it for the first time. And it's like, oh, he's just standing there.
It's very minimalist theater.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there aren't these big ornate sets. It's not Phantom of the Opera. Yeah,
I just would have liked him to move around some more.
I think
he's
really
very expressive with his voice, but his body mannerisms are very muted.
It does not match what you hear. It's very true, but I think that's almost better, because it's showing this like prim, proper, tough standing monarch, just being very flamboyant in his vocals, but standing tall and stern and being this domineering figure.
Yeah, and I noticed when they ditched the robe in Act 2, or when he came back and they ditched the robe, he was able to move around a little bit more, and he got to be a bit more expressive, and it was very fun. And it was like, oh man,
but
I would have loved that for his main number.
But it's also at that part in the show where he's less of a domineering figure. Like they've already bypassed him as a threat at that point.
They don't need he doesn't need as much pageantry as
exactly.
his intro.
Well, and the other thing is that Jonathan Groff, was not known really for comedic roles. I mean, he did Spring Awakening, where he's this deep, dark brooder, and he did. People know him recently from Mindhunter on Netflix.
Very different.
It is extremely different. And then to have him here as this gigantic, flamboyant, over-the-top, campy version of royalty.
King George III.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's disconcerting, but at the same time, it works so well. So I think he had to tread that line very carefully because he didn't want to seem. He wanted people to see the king and not to see him as the actor.
Also, very, very, very intentional to make the only white actor the face of colonialism in the show.
Yes.
Yeah, and we cannot understate the fact that like this show, in terms of being the dream vision of the American melting pot, is it is purposefully cast to play to have quote unquote minorities playing all of the founding fathers and mothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would make the original guys they're portraying roll over in their graves and like good.
Well, some of them anyway.
Well, that's the other thing.
vast
One of
majority.
the reasons they were able to get so many big names for the production is because there weren't a lot of roles at that point in Broadway for people of color, and that's
He brought in a lot of his people from In the Heights.
Yes, he definitely did.
And they weren't doing anything which is a shame because they're all great.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's nice to be able to actually see the original cast, because I did eventually get to see Hamilton. I took my mother and my family back in 2017 for my mother's 60th birthday. I managed to, months and months and months in advance get the, ungodly expensive tickets, and took my family to see it for her birthday. And by then we had moved on to the second cast with, I believe, Miguel Cervantes as Alexander Hamilton. But we also had James Monroe Iglehart, who played the genie on Aladdin's Broadway production. And he was really good. He played Thomas Jefferson and Lafayette.
Okay.
I would still stand to say that I think David Diggs, if I'm mispronouncing that.
David.
My bad.
Is how you pronounce
David.
it. Yes.
David Diggs. He definitely had a amazing amount of swagger in that role that I think is
He's got an
nearly
energy.
impossible. Yeah, nearly impossible to top.
In 2017, I believe it was Javier Munoz playing Hamilton at that point.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. Miguel was after that. Javier.
He was later.
Yeah, Javier was the guy, was basically the understudy or the alternate for Hamilton. In the original production, and he was actually the one who performed when President Obama went to see it, and so he got a lot of recognition that way. And I actually happened to have seen it with both of them. Saw it with both of them live, both once with Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hamilton, and once with Javier. I think Lin has the edge when it comes to actually rapping. I prefer Javier as Hamilton, and here's why. First of all, Javier blows Lin off the stage with his voice. I mean, it's no competition.
Yeah, that's one thing I was like. That's one kind of critique I have with Lin-Manuel. I don't particularly enjoy his singing voice.
Yeah,
I don't
I mean,
think
he's
it's
a
bad.
mediocre singer.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a bad voice. He's just
but he's next to all these Broadway.
yes,
like,
exactly.
heavyweights.
I mean, Javier's singing voice is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah,
and he doesn't play, and he plays. Javier plays Hamilton not quite. I wouldn't call it timid, but he plays it a lot more subtly. He plays it very smug, and very. He's that kind of guy who just kind of he's sitting there, does nothing, and then he says he's that guy at the edge of the party who sits there, does nothing for most of it, and then he comes in and says something really casually and blows the entire party away. That's how he played Hamilton, and I think that ultimately works better because the way Lin plays him, depending on when you saw it, he could have been doing it very timidly or very outspoken. and neither one really works. I mean, at the end of the day, neither one really fits the character, because Hamilton, he had to get ahead, and to do that, he had to play the game, and that's what, everything is about, the room where it happens. I mean, that's what a lot of the show is about. You gotta play the game, and you gotta finesse the right people, and you gotta, keep going, and you gotta, you have to do things in a certain way in order to make the career you want. And Javier is the one who embodied that, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I like that I got to see Lin-Manuel Miranda play the character. But I wish there was a pro shot version with his understudy as well, because I would really love to hear and see how the character would be played by someone who's a bit better of a performer. Because I'll be real, Lin's not an amazing actor either. He's a good actor, but he's not a great actor.
Yeah, I mean, put him next to the people you put him next to, and you can definitely see what's happening.
Like he's definitely
a much more brilliant
outshined
writer
by those around him. Like he's not, again, he is not bad by any stretch of the imagination, and you can never take away the fact that this show would not exist without him. So you know what? He's the title character.
Yeah,
that's cool. Sorry, I cut you off though, Stefan.
Oh yeah, no, I was just saying. I think his skill at writing really blows away his skill as a performer. And he's not even a bad performer, but he is like just a much more brilliant writer. Because this show is a lot more layered thematically, both in actual like writing theming and music themes than people than you would think when you first listen to it. It's got a lot going on, and I really appreciate that about the show.
Especially the way the songs kind of blend into each other so well. There's this great feeling of mix to it, where you can go from this big energy over the top number and kind of go into something with a little less energy. Like there's a flow, and you can really feel it.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I said before. By having it sung through, but not quite quote unquote sung through, it keeps its rhythm without being overwhelming, and that it just works so well. And I don't know if anybody besides Lin could have pulled that off, because the way he writes
like rap for real.
Yes.
You give your typical Broadway composer rap. Oh no, that's gonna go real bad.
Exactly.
It's like giving
just imagine Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber trying to
it's like when you like, it's the same thing as when like Broadway composers try to write rock music and Broadway performers try to perform rock music, and it's like, oh no, don't do that.
I mean, it's worked a few times.
Rarely.
Yeah, I mean, Aida, I don't know if Aida qualifies, and then things like
there's just an edge that's usually
the Billy Joel musical. What was that called? I forget. But
I don't know.
Was it Moving Out? It might have been Moving Out. But
yeah, it's almost always a name of a song of theirs.
Yeah. But
I don't know how Margaritaville did.
Well, it's a really shitty restaurant. Let's go with that first. It's not good. It's like tropical Applebee's.
I just hope somehow this doesn't get back to
Jimmy Buffett.
Good old Jimmy Buffett.
He's too busy trying to set up his retirement community. But speaking of the way the music flows, what is your favorite song in this show? Ein, what do you think is your favorite piece?
My favorite piece, so that's a complicated question, because my favorite piece is not my favorite moment in the show.
And that's fine.
Yeah, my favorite piece is probably the room where it happens. Because it works so well, and it's so catchy, and you can't get it out of your head. My favorite, and that is a close second is We Know. We have the check stubs from separate accounts, yada yada.
Right before the Reynolds payment, or Reynolds papers.
Right before the hurricane. Yeah. That's a close second, because it's so dark, but it's still comedic in a way, and I just love that juxtaposition. But my favorite moment is actually right after that, in the Reynolds pamphlet, where Angelica, confronts Hamilton and he says, "I'm not here for you. You're a jerk. What did you do?" Because somebody's finally just like telling him that you can't just go around offending everybody without consequences. And it's there was more to her bit in the cut version of the musical. In the original, it was like
the extended album.
Yep,
or something.
What were her words? He was like, "Let's review. You took a rumor a few, maybe two people knew, and refuted it by sharing an affair of which no one had accused you. I begged you to take a break. You refused to. You're kind of stupid." I did not rap that very well, but that's essentially what it said. And I wish they had kept some of that in, but I understand why they took it out.
They really got to the point of it with the satisfied line, I think.
Yeah,
because
they
of the
did.
baggage of that line, it really like.
Yeah, the satisfied line.
The mega clap back.
Yeah, the satisfied line. I hope you're satisfied. That's my favorite moment in the show, right there.
What about you, Stefan? Do you have a favorite?
I think
moment
it's Battle of
and
Yorktown.
song? That is the like. Basically, the climax of Act 1.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in that one, and I really like everything it's got going on, both musically and as a big moment. It's got a lot of fuck yeah moments in it.
It gives you the goosebumps.
Yeah, and it almost feels like cheating to pick that song because it's almost like a best of hits of the first act.
See, that's interesting because Yorktown is actually my least favorite number of the show.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, it's not bad. I don't know if it's me coming from it more from a musical angle than a musical theater angle, but it doesn't have it doesn't flow melodically or musically as well as some of the other sung numbers on the show. I don't know why. I'm probably in the minority saying that because I know everybody seems to love that one. It is one of the big bombastic numbers, but I absolutely prefer something like Non-Stop over the Battle of Yorktown. Non-Stop just gets everything right, and I love the line. No one will read this, and if it fails, that's why we need it. That's what I love about Non-Stop. Yorktown, I don't know what it is about me that doesn't grab me like the other numbers, but I'm probably in the minority there.
You're just a Tory that wishes we were never liberated on.
Yes. Oh my.
I will say my least favorite number is actually Hurricane.
Yeah, the in the eye of the hurricane is quiet.
There's quiet. Yeah. It's not a bad song, but I don't feel like it's necessary to the show. I get what it's doing, like it's explaining his reasoning for doing it, but I don't feel like I need it. I feel like I get why he would do it.
We call that a second act sleeper. That's one of my old directors told me that every show, or at least a lot of shows, have a second act sleeper, which is this really pretty song that they wanted to put in, but didn't really do it in the best way. And I have to agree with you there. It's
safe to go to the bathroom during it.
Yes, exactly. And I agree with you there. That song, it's gorgeous, but it didn't really. It could have been done a lot more succinctly in one or two lines. But I mean,
to be fair, it's probably a little better with a better singer than Lynn, or a lot better even.
I mean, I mean, people were crying when Javier was singing it, but it's Lynn's voice is not bad. Again, Lynn's voice just isn't.
It's just outshined by everybody else around him.
Yes.
And I will say, on the album, I feel like his voice actually works almost better on the album because
they're able to balance it better.
As they're able to pick out the best stuff, and also he's got a very expressive voice. His voice is good for voiceover. Which is
the other thing is in musical theater, when he's actually on stage, he has to project.
Yeah, it's a lot harder.
It's a lot harder, and your voice sounds differently when you have to project out to.
And also sing nonstop for 2
hours.
Yes,
that as opposed to singing in the confined, relaxed, environment of a studio, it's gonna sound very different. And I do agree, he sounds a lot better on the album than he does, in the Disney Plus recording.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, you're able to go in and do an actual mix on it. So you again, like you said, they don't have to project. They're allowed to kind of work with their instrument a little bit more methodically.
Yeah.
And also keeping in mind that, like, not only is it hard to do that for 2 hours, just doing it one performance in a day, they're doing it 3 times a day
Sometimes,
for like 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And it gets
at
really
least
rough on
twice a
people's
day.
voices. Yeah. And it gets really rough on people's voices, and for some people have destroyed their voices permanently. It could be genuinely a dangerous thing if you're not careful.
My personal favorite song is Room Where It Happens, and in fact I think
pretty good.
my favorite part in general is Aaron Burr. I think his part kind of steals the show for me in a lot of ways. Like, I love pretty much every song he's involved with. I enjoy more than the other songs.
Lin-Manuel has said that Wait For It and Room Where It Happens are two of the best things he's ever written, and Aaron Burr got them both. So you're right on the money for that. And it's interesting because Aaron Burr himself is typically portrayed historically as a completely unsympathetic character. This murderer. So this is the first thing to really portray him in any sort of sympathetic light. Even though it's not, I mean, you can tell he's not a saint, but he's not a jerk either, He
got the Jesus Christ Superstar Judas treatment.
Yes, that's
he just wants, like, he is a indecisive man who just wants to be in a position of power. He wants to matter.
Yep.
And that's basically his character arc.
Yep.
And it doesn't work out for him, unfortunately.
Well, and that's what I like is that his character goes through such an arc. Because, I mean, it actually reminds me, I don't know if either of you are Trekkies, but of course. Okay, so you remember the Next Generation episode Tapestry, where Picard gets to go back in time and see what his life would be like if he weren't such a headstrong, cocky guy in his youth.
Yeah, and recorder.
and he grew up to be this kind of nothing, this dead-end job. And the quotes were, I think, if you want to get ahead, you have to take chances, stand out in a crowd, get noticed. You've had lofty goals your entire life, but you've never been willing to do what's necessary to attain them. And that's exactly what Aaron Burr was doing throughout the entire show. He was just waiting for something to happen. Wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. And it didn't work out. And the only time he gets anywhere is when he's like, okay, screw it. I'm going to go take what I want. And it works out for him, but he did it for the wrong reasons. And that's why he ultimately didn't get fulfilled as how he wanted. And that's just such an amazing arc to me. And in this context, it just works so well.
I think there's that amazing moment which you can't get on stage, like you can't get in the live performance, because one of the things that this I really want to give Disney a lot of credit for this. I think more Broadway shows should be preserved like this, especially some of the bigger ones, because so many Broadway shows, when they translate to movies, they decide, oh, we're going to do fun cinematography. It's like, no, just show the fucking stage show. Film it in an interesting way, and you can get a lot done that way. Because the moment where the election is decided for Thomas Jefferson, spoilers, and you get this close-up on Burr's face where he's like, what? What?
Jefferson has beliefs, Burr has none.
Burr has none.
Yep. And that translates very well to today. Even if you don't agree with someone politically or philosophically, you could still tell if someone is still acting for themselves or acting, because they want some form of orderly government. Yes, some people can. But that was what Hamilton wrote in his letters to Congress in support of Jefferson. He was like, if we have to choose between Burr and Jefferson, we should choose Jefferson, because at the very least he stands for something. He stands for something, and for that reason I consider him a lot less dangerous than Burr. You can read the full text of his letters online, and it's absolutely amazing.
Which is even more insanely poignant after 2016.
Yeah.
We don't have to get into it.
We don't have to, but the fact that this was wrten before that, and the fact that it parallels, I mean, Jesus.
Oh, yeah, I was seeing the parallels during the election.
Yeah.
But, oh man, what was I thinking? I was thinking something. Oh well.
It's hard to say. We're always thinking something at all times. But yeah, in terms of translating a Broadway show to a movie theatrical production, which this would have eventually been. And I'm not sure if this necessarily would have worked on the big screen, if I'm going to be honest. I think it's actually way better on a streaming platform.
It's a good streaming watch.
Yeah.
And
I can't imagine this on the big screen.
And I was gonna say, I wanted to piggyback on more pro shot Broadway shows would be amazing, and especially when the shows are no longer running on Broadway, just release a pro shot. Like, it's a way to make extra money after it's done.
It
doesn't replace.
I think what they did is they filmed all of the productions throughout, or maybe all of I can't remember how many. It was 5 or 6 different showings of Hamilton that they cut between. Yeah. Because and it's very noticeable actually. There are some shots where Angelica will be wearing a flower, and then it cuts to a different angle of the same moment, and she's not wearing the flower in the same spot. It's
thanks.
You can tell
ruined it for me.
Yes, absolutely ruined. But it's only something that if you're really looking for, you'll notice.
Yeah.
So yeah, you take maybe 1 week of productions, just have a professional film crew come in, get some cover shots later, because there are definite moments where a camera was on stage and they did something in the middle of the number and they spliced it in.
Yeah, or they had just a giant crane where the audience would be.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say we're lucky in that a lot of great musicals have pro shots. Older great musicals, a lot of Stephen Sondheim's shows have great pro shot versions.
Yeah.
Into the Woods, Sweeney Todd.
Yep,
both
that's
have
how I saw
Broadway
Into the
recordings.
Woods.
Yeah.
Well, Sweeney Todd's wasn't a Broadway one though.
That one was off Broadway.
That was a BBC special, and they actually took out one of the more mature numbers in that production. But yes, sorry, I interrupted.
No, I get you. And Company has a couple good ones. Assassins doesn't, unfortunately, which bums me out. But I just more shows having pro shot versions would honestly improve people's ability to care, because if it's not a great experience on the album, it's really hard to get non-musical theater people to give a shit.
And I would prefer more pro shot versions to more movie adaptations.
Yes. Because I enjoyed the Les Mis movie, but my God, is it better on stage?
Yeah. I mean, Hamilton, I don't think it would work as a movie, because it's how it's staged and how it's very abstract in its set design, in its choreography. The ensemble.
You'd end up with something like Rent.
Yeah, the ensemble is almost like set pieces, in a good way, in Hamilton, and I don't think that would translate well to the big screen. And
you'd have to get really the only way I could imagine making a movie of Hamilton was if it kind of read more like a series of music videos than a movie, but then that might not make a very good movie.
Well, and not to mention, then you'd run into the problem of celebrity casting, which they would do for
the only
everything,
way...
and cast every part. They wouldn't multicast people.
Plus, the thing I fucking despise, the original song, Oscar song.
Oh yeah,
where you have to write a new song.
To be fair, what they might do there is they'd probably just take one of the extended songs that was pushed away into Lin-Manuel's vault for just not being part of the final draft and just usher that in.
Possibly, but you know how all the quote unquote live action, some are actually live action, but the Disney remakes always have a new song that kind of sucks, or at least doesn't have the same vibe, because Alan Menken's not in the same place as a writer as he used to be. And also, I'm pretty sure execs are make it modern, make it cool.
Well, if you want to hear some of those, you can listen to the Hamilton mixtape, which has some more modern artists doing some of the cut stuff, and it's absolutely fantastic. But
some of them are really good, some of them are eh.
Some of them are eh. But
I love the Ben Folds and Regina Spektor version of Theodosia.
Which, by the way, I think is a sleeper for probably one of my other favorite songs in the show. I love Theodosia.
I love that song. That song nearly makes me cry.
It makes me cry.
The lyrical content is really strong, and the melody's very sweet.
And then Kelly Clarkson doing "It's Quiet Uptown" was absolutely gorgeous. But wait, that was Kelly Clarkson, right? I'm pretty sure.
I can't remember.
I don't know.
Yeah, but going back to the movie comment, the only way I think Hamilton would work on as a movie adaptation would be if they did it something like Chicago. Where with Chicago, for the big numbers, they had sort of this abstract, sort of almost
dancing in the void kind of thing.
Dancing in the void, yeah, that's a good way to put it. And
They made the assumption of musical theater explicit in the movie.
Yes, and I think that's the only way Hamilton would work on the big screen. And because if they did it like a Disney, a quote unquote Disney musical, having congressmen, in a rap battle, it would just feel very anachronistic. It works on stage because the whole thing is framed not necessarily as a historical piece. And doing it with big, historically accurate sets and stuff, I don't think that would translate well.
And some people theorize, including Howard Ashman back in the day, before he passed, have theorized that live-action musical films generally don't tend to work, partially because it's harder for people to suspend their disbelief in a film, because there's this level of immersive reality that exists.
Which I don't necessarily agree with, but
I can see where they're coming from, and I think that's a barrier for people who don't like musicals often. But a lot of the time, people are like, I don't like musicals, but they like Disney musicals, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's partially because animation is an easier medium for you to suspend your disbelief in, and
it also has
watching
a different
something on stage, it's the same. Yeah. It's the same deal.
Because both of those things have a very different energy from a live-action movie.
Yeah.
In theater, you have the kineticism of the crowd and the stage. In animation, you have you can make up physics basically.
Yeah.
It blows my mind that they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna make a Wicked movie. It's gonna be live action. It's like, Wicked. Oh, the only way I could see a Wicked movie working is if it's animated. But sure, make your live action Wicked movie with your new original song that you're gonna cart out fucking Stephen Schwartz for.
At that point, though, why not just make it animated? Because you can still get Idina Menzel to come back and play.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Alphaba.
It'd be great. You get Idina Menzel, Kristen Chenoweth, bring them all back. But no, now they're gonna make a new live action version. It's gonna look like Oz the Great,
the Great and Powerful.
Yeah, exactly.
Or The Wiz.
Oh my God.
What did you guys think of the Wiz adaptation, the movie one?
I never saw it.
I think it's a bad movie. I think The Wiz is good. I think the movie is bad.
I never saw it live in any sort of professional capacity, so I have nothing to compare it against. I enjoyed it enough as a musical. I don't know how it really works, compared to the live version.
I think the stage version of The Wiz is actually very powerful in the parallels it draws, and whatnot, and it's a good musical. It's just the movie is very boringly shot, and it's just not. And I think people like it despite how the movie was made.
Yep.
It's just that the core musical is good enough to overcome the
like everything,
flaws.
It comes down to personal taste. I mean, if there's something that you're glomming onto with it, you embrace that. You end up enjoying it. I mean, Lord knows I have a lot of hot takes on things that a lot of people don't like. But when it comes to these adaptations from stage to screen, do you guys have any favorites, standouts that really a stage musical that you think actually adapted very well to being on screen?
West Side Story.
Okay.
West Side Story. They did it. The cast is small enough that it translates well. Because if it were a big ensemble piece with 100 choir members, it's harder to translate that to the screen. But for West Side Story, I mean, for 50 years ago or whatever it was, they shot it very emotionally with a lot of close-ups, and a lot of personal feelings, and even they did the whole quote-unquote dancing in the void stuff to an extent. And that just worked very well, in my opinion. I've seen multiple productions of West Side Story live, and they're all great. I think the film version actually works better. They also switched around the order of some of the songs in the film version to fit more with the narrative. Officer Krupke in West Side Story was originally a comic relief song in Act 2, after they kill Riff. But in the show, in the film, it's this fun song before the Rumble even happens. So I think that's one of the reasons it works. They changed the order of things around a little bit, but end of rant.
Fair enough. Stefan, do you have any?
I just wanted a quick follow up. Have you heard about the Steven Spielberg movie?
I have, and I have low expectations but high hopes.
I have high interest. Steven Spielberg has never made a musical his entire directing career, and I want to know how he would do it. But that said, in terms of movies, for me, I'm trying to think of another answer, but I don't think there is one for me. It's Little Shop of Horrors.
Same. Like the energy, the jazziness, and even the actors that they get to do it, I think do it so well.
Steve Martin. My
goddamn
goodness.
Martin as the dentist is amazing.
He transforms that role. Also, just the addition of Bill Murray doing just a really long bit, taking Jack Nicholson's role from the original movie, is great. And Frank Oz is a genuinely good director, and he worked with the comedians he was working with, and also Levy Stubbs. Like, the world needed more of Levy Stubbs singing than it got.
Yeah, I mean that was the voice I modeled Audrey 2 around.
Absolutely, everyone does.
My take.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't know who doesn't.
Feed me, Seymour, feed me now.
Yeah, like
fucking.
And the fucking shit he does with his voice just as an actor, like his pitch, like the way he just alters his voice to be weird and alien sometimes is just so good.
It's fantastic. I love that movie still. I go back. I think I watch it at least once a year. Sometimes the Alamo Draft House out here will do a rescreening of it. I'll be like, you know what? I'll do that.
And visually, the animatronics still hold up really well.
Mm-hmm. Like the practical effects are amazing.
Looks fucking amazing to this day.
The show itself is very reminiscent of Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yes,
which
also I feel like translates very well to screen, but not quite as well.
I tend to love shows that like start off Broadway and aren't intended for Broadway, because shows intended for Broadway, there's always this level of sanitation involved. Mm-hmm. And they're always intended to be broad and intended to be marketable, and that weakens them. It's the difference between a musical and a show tune, right?
Yes.
Like, and I love show tunes, but like that's why like every Stephen Sondheim's my favorite musical composer. Period. There is no equal for me. And everything he does starts off Broadway because no one wants to fund what he does. It always gets bad reviews at first until 20 years later. People are like, oh yeah, this is a good musical. I don't know why we didn't notice before. I guess
he's ahead of his time in a lot of ways.
He always is, yeah.
Because he's willing to take risks.
He treats musicals as a medium.
Yeah, well, he actually got started doing the lyrics for West Side Story. He didn't know music for that. That was all Leonard Bernstein. But I mean, he got his start doing that, and I think he learned a lot from that. And he was like, absolutely. Okay, we can do all this stuff, but the world wasn't quite ready for it. He wanted to be more modern. He was a lot like Stravinsky was, the classical composer. When Stravinsky wrote Rite of Spring, people were like, "This is terrible. What's with all these dissonant notes? Why does this sound like a cacophony of nothing?" And then
his music is so fucking experimental and interesting.
Yes, and then 40 years later, or 30 years later, whatever it was, he was the only composer still alive to have his music featured in Fantasia, you know? And so it's that kind of thing where there's always these kinds of artists, these people who are absolutely brilliant but are underappreciated in their time, and Sondheim is definitely one of them.
Yeah. I have a friend who is a composer who said, like, I don't really like musicals, and I just sent him Company, the opening number of Company, and he ended up watching the whole thing. He's like, you know what, I actually love this, because musically Company is so interesting. And just to wrap this back around, not only was West Side Story like Sondheim's first big lyrical job, he also years later brought in Lin-Manuel Miranda to do a Spanish language version of the show and to translate the lyrics for him. And Lin-Manuel Miranda starred in Merrily We Roll Along, and I think he learned a lot from Sondheim.
Oh, definitely.
That would not surprise me.
Because I think Lin-Manuel Miranda does the thing that Sondheim has talked about that he does as a composer, which is he kind of has one theme for a show, and then he just fucks with it for like every song, and that's what part of what makes them all so cohesive is that for Sweeney Todd, he based his music on the DBZA, which everyone does that, but you know, and then he just took that, and nearly every number in the show is based on the DBZA, but tweaked, and so they all sound very cohesive, and you can meld them together very easily, but they all also sound distinct and fun and good as songs because he's also good at his job.
We've also been seeing a trend in recent years where you take a film, like just something that started on the big screen and has later been adapted to Broadway. Sometimes not even being necessarily a musical. I'm looking at you, Shrek.
Shrek is kind of a musical.
Kind of, but it's one of it's a musical in the same way that ABBA is a musical, where you're just taking somebody else's pre-existing songs.
Yeah, like it's kind of shocking that Shrek wasn't a jukebox musical with all the pop music that was in the original.
But you have The Lion King, Aladdin. It's mostly Disney stuff. Let's be honest.
Mary Poppins.
I will say that there's been good shows that aren't musicals that were adapted to stage musicals. Off the top of my head,
Evil Dead the musical, bam, one of my favorites.
I haven't listened to that one, but I was interested in that one.
It's pretty fun. It's pretty fucking fun.
But off the top of my head, Beetlejuice, Legally Blonde, Matilda, Groundhog Day, all pretty good musicals.
Lord of the Rings, I don't know if that one was any good, but
I'm not sure
I know it exists.
Spider-Man, Turn Off the Dark.
I know that. I think in Japan there was even a Pirates of the Caribbean musical.
Japan's theater scene is like legit bizarre sometimes, though. Like they'll do stage productions for pretty much any popular anime of the day as well. I know there was a Phoenix Wright one. I saw clips of that some time ago.
Attack on Titan, the musical.
But you know, I appreciate that their musical theater scene's very alive.
Yeah.
More active than ours, even.
Yeah, well, especially now. I mean, it's important to say right now Broadway is completely shut down, if you didn't know that. People are, everybody, you watched Hamilton, everybody you saw on that production is currently basically out of work. Because of the virus. Japan does not have that problem because Japan, everybody wore a mask. And everybody, they have an unemployment rate of, I think, something like 3%, as opposed to us, who's at something like 20 or 25. And people are all banding together to get through it together. America has not been doing that, and I hope that changes.
I think we all agree with that. Yeah. Anybody out there?
No! It's infringing on my freedom.
My freedom to breathe. You know what else infringes on your freedom to breathe? A virus that wants to constrict your lungs.
God's beautiful
I didn't
system.
mean to make this. I didn't mean to make this a downer, but I feel like
it's fine.
It's important to bring it up because Broadway is essentially at this point it's dead and it won't be back until at least 2021. And that's sad because there's so much good material out there. But on the bright side, I'm sure when it does come back, everybody will have 1,000 great ideas that they've been sitting on. So who knows? Maybe we'll see a resurgence.
Because that's that's the thing. Like, there's that level of energy. I've seen 2 shows on Broadway. I saw Book of Mormon and I saw Hamilton. By the way, I love Book of Mormon. I know we didn't really talk about, other theatrical productions too much here because we're focusing on, like, between screen and theater and with a heavy influence on Hamilton. But Book of Mormon, fantastic, lovely show. I would also one show that I wish I had seen, Spam-A-Lot. I have the album.
Yeah, I love the album.
I love it, but I never got to see it live.
Especially because fucking Tim Curry played King Arthur.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
See,
that's a preserved show. I wish.
The fact that like that there's no pro shot version of that makes me want to cry.
See, I always bringing this almost back around to Lin-Manuel Miranda. When they got him to do the music for Moana, I was like, when I first saw Moana, I was like, why is Tim Curry not playing that crab? Because that is so like obviously a Tim Curry role. That is, that Hexus from Fern Gully matched with Frankfurter. I mean, and like that was obviously supposed to be Tim Curry.
I will say the reason is that the entire cast, with the exception of one character, is Polynesian, of Polynesian descent. And that character was played by Jermaine Clements.
That's the guy.
Which, by the way, he's also very fantastic. I love.
He's absolutely fantastic. But I was like, when I heard the song, the only person I could think of was Tim Curry, because he's the only one who's done that kind of slimy song. That's
I think it was an intentional reference to him a bit. Though there's also a bit David Bowie, and that's also
definitely some David Bowie.
A lot of Bowie.
Because Jermaine loves doing his Bowie. But just real quick, the one non-Polynesian cast member is oh man, his name popped out of my head. Wash from Firefly, Alan Tudyk.
Oh yeah, and he played the chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, like he's definitely in that Disney folder right now. He does like all their creature effects now. He got into Star Wars. Like, good on
set
him.
for life.
I love Alan Tudyk.
He was he also voiced Superman in what was it? Justice League War, the one with Darkseid, whatever it was. But
kidding.
Yeah, but so he's found for somebody who was basically only in Firefly, he's found very fantastic work as a voice actor. So good on him.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to throw out a quick question.
Sure.
If you like, what is like the one show? If you had to pick one show to get a pro shot version released, what would it be?
I would. Okay, it's kind of a tie. I would love to have seen the original cast of Spam-A-Lot, and I would absolutely love honestly, and this is one that I actually think you could do, not even necessarily as a pro shot, but translate it to be on screen and have it actually work really well. Evil Dead the Musical would actually probably work pretty well just as a film adaptation. Did either of you ever see it?
No, I remember when it came out though.
I was obsessed. Little known thing about me, Evil Dead 2, my favorite movie of all time. So when I heard Evil Dead the Musical was a thing, I looked it up immediately. I found it, and I'm like, okay, is this ever showing? Because they have this thing called the Splatter Zone, where essentially you're going to get like doused with fake viscera by sitting in these like sections, because it's a black box show. It's not a big stage show. And I'm like, okay, I need to get tickets to this because they had a traveling production that was going through Minneapolis where I was going to school at the time, and I need to get tickets in the goddamn Splatter Zone. I'm getting white shirts for it. It's such a fun show. I recommend looking it up if you enjoy those like campy B horror movies from back in the day, which I love. But yeah, those are the two that I'd go with. What about you, Wine?
I would have to think about it because there's just too many choices. It's not something I've ever really considered because
gun to your head.
Gun to my head?
Yes.
You have to pick one.
Gun to my head, I would get shot because I wouldn't be able to make the decision.
Get shot?
Yeah.
That's a shame.
That is a shame. I've never been the most decisive person, but you know, I'm sure there's. I would give me 5 minutes and I would find one, but I couldn't just answer off.
Let's Stefan answer first then.
Okay. I'll throw one in and see if you can come up with anything. One that I like. It's not out yet actually, but I really want to see it and see how it goes. Is they're currently making a Princess Bride stage musical.
Disney I heard about that.
Is actually putting money into it. And I hope it's good, and because Princess Bride would actually make a great musical. So I actually would love to see a pro shot version of that. And since Disney is producing that musical, that's not that crazy of an option. So
probably not. I mean, if they get enough success, which I don't know how you measure like the metric of success when you have something on a streaming service that you're getting monthly revenue from. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing it's how many new subscribers you get for it. I don't know, but however they decide to measure their metric of success with releasing Hamilton on Disney Plus, that might be something that they just add, like little pro shots of their theater productions, which would be really cool.
Yeah. And I think, like, I guess we haven't covered this. So Cliff, if you're still thinking, I can go into a thing.
I thought of one.
Oh, you do?
Okay.
What was it then?
Miss Saigon.
Okay.
Miss Saigon would be. I think that would be absolutely fantastic pro shot. But I saw a very fine production of that, so I'm not dying for it. But if I had to pick one, that's what I would pick.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, on the subject of like why haven't there been more pro shots? I think there's this old world idea that like if people have the video version of a stage show, then they just won't see the stage show. Even though time and time again, I feel like that's proven untrue. Because
that's absolutely false. Because there is that different level of energy between the two.
Absolutely.
Because like a lot of pro shot like shows, I don't think Hamilton's gonna like die out anytime soon. In fact, I think it's gonna only do better. Now, there's like the Sondheim musicals like Into the Woods and Sweeney Todd, which have had Broadway, like at least Sweeney Todd's had Broadway revivals, and they've done pretty well. Like that's why they keep doing it.
Phantom of the Opera, which is like how long has that been on?
40
Broadway?
Years or whatever it is.
Cats.
Okay,
like,
so Cats.
Cats sucks, but like it has a pro shot version and people saw it.
It's the thing about Cats is it's not really a musical, it's just a dance show.
Yes, and my sister was obsessed with it when we were younger, and she forced me to sit through it. The pro shot version.
It has like maybe two good songs.
And I was like, why am I watching this? And she actually, texted me a few months ago, and she was like, remember Cats and how much we both loved it? And I was like, what? You made me sit. Yeah, you made me sit through that because you loved it, and you were like, what? I know I didn't. And yeah, but yeah, Cats is one of those ones I will never understand why. I guess it does well in foreign markets because you don't necessarily need to understand what's actually happening.
It's a good show for tourists.
Yes, it is. And then I never saw the movie. I'm sure Martin will hold my head to the fire until I do. But it's
you're missing out. I'll tell you that.
It's an experience. I think it's fun to do once.
It is. It is absolutely worth a watch. I will say that. Just for the decrepitly curious.
Like if you're the kind of person to do this, like once the quarantine is over, there's probably going to be a lot more rowdy screenings of Cats. Where
there should be.
And that would be a great way to see it. It's just with an audience that's ready to make fun of it the entire time.
I will keep that in mind, but I already I don't know. I don't know.
So
don't need that in your life.
Yeah, it's like there's enough weird shit going on in my head. I don't need that too.
But yeah, my point in bringing it up was like
it's like the dean from Community. Oh, this better not awaken something in me.
But yeah, my point in bringing up Cats is that like in the 90s it got a pro shot version that was released on VHS, and it kept on trucking. Like it didn't kill the musical. So like I don't know where this idea comes from, where it's like, oh yeah, well if we just release the pro shot version, oh shit, I just remembered a show that Just completely switching gears. I just remember a show that has been made that I would love to see a pro shop version, which is A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder.
Oh, I have not heard of this show.
Nor have I.
It won the Tony for Best Musical in, I think, what was it, 2014?
In the Broadway lull years, I see.
Yeah, like I think it was like just the year before Hamilton or something. But it's a great musical. I love it, and it also it was on a very small stage, but it only ran on Broadway for like a year or two before it just unfortunately died out. But it's a great musical, and I'd love to see. I've seen a bootleg of it, but it's not. You can barely tell what's going on, unfortunately.
Yeah. And that's fair, and I'm really glad that we, just to kind of wrap everything up into this, I'm really glad that we have this really well stitched together pro shot of Hamilton, because this is a show that, like I was saying before, kind of really brought big, broad appeal to Broadway again. Yeah. After so many years, there have been good shows that have come out. I mean, Book of Mormon, but like I was saying, the last really big one that came out would have been Phantom, the one that brought that sort of mainstream appeal. Arguably Cats, because that did have quite a cultural following to it. But
you could say Les Mis as well, but
Les Mis, and I mean, but that's part of kind of mid-tier thing, because I put Les Mis and Rent kind of on the same cultural zeitgeist level.
And
sure,
because
I was just gonna say, you can make the claim that Hamilton is the first big cultural phenomenon Broadway show in a long time.
Yes.
That is an actual musical in and of itself, not a spectacle musical.
Yes.
Even Wicked was a spectacle musical. The stage production was the star of the show in a lot of ways, but not Hamilton.
Well, yeah, and again, it helps that Hamilton started out as a hip hop album and just grew into something bigger. So it was meant to be listened to when it was first.
It started minimalist, and it just kept going that way.
Yeah, and it works well enough that everybody loves it.
But by the way, I know we got to wrap up. Just someone in the chat asked, "How are the Mel Brooks musicals?" I really like them.
I've only ever seen the film of the producers, but I enjoy the producers.
Have you seen the original producers or the film of the musical of the film?
Yes.
Because those are two separate things.
They are. But I'm referring to the musical.
Okay.
I think the
Who is calling me? Sorry.
That's a sign as more of anything.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, the Mel Brooks musicals I think are pretty good. Both the producers and Young Frankenstein.
Yeah, and I mean, there have been a lot of musicals that we could talk about. Avenue Q, which
Robin Hood Men in
Tights. I actually
Tights.
think would be. Here's one thing that I think is actually kind of an interesting point to bring up with a lot of the musicals. Not many of them age particularly well, but they're when you know that there's a classic, you know it's a classic. Hamilton, I think, will age very well, along with Phantom and Cats. But there are certain shows that I don't think will age quite as well. I think Avenue Q is one of those shows that's probably not going to age quite as well as many of the others.
I saw it's one of its final off-Broadway shows when I visited New York last year. And no, it doesn't. And I'm pretty sure the actor who is playing Gary Coleman was not appreciating the song Everyone's a Little Bit Racist. She did not seem into it, and I don't blame her, especially in the now times. Back in 2005 or whatever, some people might have believed that acting like racism was an equal opportunity thing was fun, but in the year 2019, I don't think that was fun for anyone.
Like with everything, there is a certain level of truth to that element of comedy, but it's much
not necessarily representative
of the whole issue entirely.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of the show actually does hold up in a lot of ways. That song is a big show-stopping number, and it does not hold up at all. It's actually not good.
I will remember Avenue Q much more, like, because I've seen the show off Broadway when it went through Minneapolis at one point, and I enjoyed it. But I will always remember Avenue Q more for the World of Warcraft machinima around it and its songs. But yeah, Hamilton now available on Disney Plus. Give it a look. It's well worth the 2+ hours of
and
watching
the
it.
$6.99 or
it's
whatever it costs for a Disney Plus subscription if you don't have one.
Yeah, well worth that. Well worth, definitely more bang for your buck than the thousands of dollars it costs to see it live with multiple people. Speaking from experience.
And if I may tack on just one extra recommendation, the documentary 6 by Sondheim on HBO is really good, and I recommend that to anyone who likes Stephen Sondheim or musicals in general.
Right on. Well, this has been the Talkcast
hold on.
Show.
Before yeah. Oh, I did mention Robin Hood Men in Tights in the chat, but before we wrap up, Grant wanted us to talk a bit about the album. Before.
Okay.
So the album that we just put out, TFS Tunes, is something of mostly my work, but it's a collaborative effort from everybody, with some of this stuff that we've just thrown out on YouTube without ever really releasing it properly, or in some stuff we've never released before, and a few remasters. Do you guys have any questions about that?
This is... I feel like I got derailed here.
Yeah, it is like right at the end, and just Grant said, "Hey, we should talk about it because I'm here anyway."
I touted it out in the beginning.
Yeah, you did, and that's a good one. But
either way, thank you everybody for tuning in. You can find the TFS Tunes album on Amazon, on Google Play Music, on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, anywhere you can find music, you can find it there. Anybody who wants to ask Ein questions about it can stick around for the post show, which we do have every week here on twitch.tv/StreamFourStar. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe and healthy out there.